Okay.
Hi, my name is Mary Rosinski. I'm a board member with Community Alliance for a Better Government, and I am honored to have tonight with us Kevin Brown, who is also a board member of Community Alliance for a Better Government. And he also is a wealth of knowledge and information on so many different topics here in Evanston. He's been well respected and loved by Evanston residents and been outspoken on issues of social justice, reparations, and other community issues. Kevin worked for the city with our children, and you'll have to explain this more with I think it's called the Community Affairs Department. I didn't know this.
Well, actually, the youth and young adult division was what I managed along with workforce development and training opportunities at the City of Evanston.
Yeah, and you just took that department to a wonderful height. And now, and there was, we can talk at another cabbage coffee about that incident, but I think we'll go, and now you've been with Safer Foundation, which you are just doing remarkable work with down in Chicago with youth. Do you want to give us a little rundown on that?
Sure. Well, thank you first for asking me to be a part of the conversations. I think like you, I'm a big believer in community conversation and community engagement, and having community be involved in the operation of local government, and just understanding how tax dollars are implemented in the community. So I appreciate the opportunity to share today and just to have a conversation. As you said, I left the City of Evanston in 2019, and in 2020, right after the new year, joined the Safer Foundation, which is a 50-year-old organization that supports individuals in our state, as well as in the Quad Cities in Iowa, who have been justice impacted or justice involved and have had dealings with the criminal legal system. And we are an organization that our primary mission is to help individuals who are leaving the carceral system to obtain employment, housing, healthcare opportunities, and to really look at what we term holistic reentry. People coming back into the society who oftentimes, when they went into the criminal legal system, really didn't have very many good opportunities, and then by being in the system, incurred more damage. And so what Safer has been doing for 50 years is helping people to rebuild their lives. And our motto is to create a road to a better future. So that I've been working with them and on a lot of different aspects. I'm the Senior Director for External Affairs and Community Partnerships. And in that role, not only do I deal with the community in the city of Chicago, but also work with the legislative body in both the city government in Chicago, as well as our state government in Illinois. So we do a lot of legislative work, creating policies that will serve our population and serve the population in general to help Illinois be a stronger, more productive state. So that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 3 years. I love it. I've really had a great time in my role, and you know, so I'm really at peace with that.
Well, and I noticed too, so we're going to be talking tonight about the Ryan Field project. And I know there's the zoning issues, which will be a future conversation with CABG, and there is the community issues, and there is the fair tax issues and the economics. But in talking with you over the last week, you brought up an issue that I think is really important. And being as you were also a policy, you worked in California with the federal policy education.
Yeah, I worked in for 5 years in the largest education policy organization in the state of California, which is the California School Boards Association, which has over 1,000 members. And our organization actually wrote pretty much the book on education policy in the state of California. And so what we did was take the new laws that were passed and create both administrative regulations as well as board policies for school districts across that state.
And then you went to school in St. Louis, a law school for labor. Did you?
Well, I was, yeah, my background, you know, I've been really fortunate to have done a lot of things over a pretty long career. I'm a graduate of Northwestern University. I was a political science major there. And shortly after I graduated, about 4 or 5 years after I graduated from Northwestern, I enrolled at Washington University in St. Louis School of Law and worked there after law school very briefly as an assistant city attorney in the city of St. Louis. But I wanted to go back into the field of education because I love young people and kids and really just trying to help them to grow and develop. And so I started working at a college called Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota.
Yeah, it's an amazing college, yeah. But see,
yeah, it is. It is.
Wealth of actually, my stepfather's son was a dean up there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but listening to him talk about Carleton was pretty amazing. So you have this amazing wealth of knowledge. And going back to the Northwestern project, when we were talking earlier in the week, you had mentioned the divergence of the Northwestern mission of education into a path of commercial entertainment venue with this project, and that what a conflict that is. And you're an alumni there, and I would like to kind of elaborate on your thoughts on what, because there's a $15 billion endowment. They're a huge corporation. They don't pay taxes, maybe little bits here and there, and on some of the properties they own. But, and the Evanston residents, now I'm just making my own statement on this isn't you, but the Northwestern doesn't pay for the infrastructure that keeps our city running. And so people have asked for, payments in lieu of taxes and other places. That argument we'll talk about more another day. But this veering away from the educational mission into this entertainment venue and this sports venue, I'd like to hear more on your opinion on that as a Northwestern alumni, because I know you love Northwestern. You went to school there, and so it's not that people dislike Northwestern students, but as a corporation, are they acting in the best interests of their mission?
Yeah, it's really troubling to me. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the university because I was also a student athlete at Northwestern. So I played college football at Northwestern. I supported the football program. When I first came back to Evanston in 2012, did some work with the mentoring program for the football team. And, I supported all of that, but this recent iteration where the university has embarked on this mission to build $1 billion football stadium just didn't sit well with me, and I'm sure it doesn't sit well with a lot of alumni, because it isn't consistent with the educational mission of the institution. Building, if it were only just football, some could make some argument on that end that it is consistent with the education mission. But now that football has become part, or Northwestern has become part of this multi-billion-dollar college football industry through the expansion of the Big Ten Conference, this commercialization of sort of academics and sports is not really consistent with a educational mission. And so that's kind of what I have a problem with. I think about all of the things that we could do in Evanston with $1 billion to improve our community, to end homelessness in Evanston, to end poverty in Evanston with $1 billion. You could do that. To create real affordable housing that would support many of the ethnic communities that are in our town. But to just take $1 billion and pour it into what's really an entertainment complex, I just think it serves an end that really isn't consistent with the educational mission.
Yeah. So one of the, as the media campaign from Northwestern is in full gear now, and we're all getting 8.5 by 11 glossies and how great this is going to be in the jobs. One thing I think you who have worked so much with kids and with young adults and trying to create meaningful jobs afterward, what would you suggest like Northwestern do? Because these are one and done jobs. These people are here and they're getting trained maybe, but it's not like they're creating a trade school or a school. So what do you think would be a better use of, what am I thinking? How would you bring kids into and have them benefit into the program and have them benefit other than these jobs, which we just went through? Robert Crown and Bully and Andrews said they couldn't find enough people in town to meet the jobs under the minority standards.
I think that there's got to be real facts put on the table about how Northwestern construction projects impact the local Evanston economy in terms of employment. And I think the real facts say they haven't had a measurable substantive impact, particularly with Black people and others, people of color in our community. Part of that has to do with whether or not individuals are registered and qualified to be in local unions, which is a big piece of it. But then there's the whole notion of skilled tradespeople participating in these projects. Northwestern has embarked on a tremendous building campaign between 2012 and present time, where they've spent billions of dollars with new construction. And when we look back on that construction, we don't see the employment of huge numbers of Black people or brown people or regular other folks in the community in these construction projects. So that's a real problem to now launch a new project that's worth $1 billion and to say that the behavior from the past is now going to transform and be different in the future. It's just being inconsistent. So I don't see that happening. And part of it has to do with the pipelines that have not been created that would actually train people and certify them in the various union trades so that they would be qualified to access these opportunities. Now, Northwestern did some great things. When I worked for the City of Evanston, I worked with the university to create a skilled trades program, and we did create an employment pipeline in the facilities department that actually hired 24 Evanston residents. Almost all of them were African American, and it was a fantastic program. It was ended, unfortunately, and we really don't know. We really never got the real reason why the funding ended, but that program was stopped, even though it was a fantastic success. So that's where a person like me, who's actually been involved with the university, helping to bring employment, making them aware of their procurement policies and how their procurement policies could better impact and enable historically disadvantaged businesses in our community. You know, I'm very familiar with that stuff, and Northwestern has done a very poor job in that area. So there are a lot of things that we could do differently. Number one, create a employment training and pipeline program, but they're not. You don't hear any talk of that at all.
Right.
All you hear is, you know, the push to get the sign off to build the stadium.
Kevin, when was that program? Was that during that 12 to 19 time period? And how many years did it last? Because that sounds like exactly what people have really been asking for.
Oh yeah, it lasted about 2 years, between 2017 and 2019. It was an invention of myself and Mr. John D'Angelo, who's now working for the University of Chicago. Basically, you know, Morty Shapiro was a fantastic partner in creating that program. And Morty Shapiro, I'm sad to see him leave, because he did have a lot of vision for creating more community between the local Evanston community and the university at Northwestern. And so it's kind of sad to see him leave, because with that, you know, that whole notion of really being a good partner and a good neighbor to your local community kind of left with Morty. So that's unfortunate. He met with Mayor Tisdall at the time, and she had a fantastic vision for helping particularly disenfranchised youth to be trained, to be better educated, and to really have opportunity to have a better life. And those two were really supportive, and they put real dollars. The program that we started, the skilled trades program, was a multi-million-dollar program that actually enrolled those participants into the union upon the completion of the program.
See, that's what you need, is that continue, because we do have the Rebuilding Warehouse here who's doing it on a level 2, and that it needs that consistency and long-term, and then it needs to go into the union.
Yeah.
And in order to have sustainable jobs so that people can stay and live here and raise their families.
Yeah.
Something else you had brought up was just the possibility, like, where is Northwestern's corporate culture, educational culture, you know, moral culture in terms of its mission and in Evanston? I know that's a lot to cover, and I don't expect it, but it seems to me like those three are in conflict right now.
And for me, they are. As a graduate, somebody who was trained at the university, I have some challenges. And maybe it's a part of what's happening in the larger culture where, you know, in the political culture, there's this huge argument about how impactful government can be in improving the lives of people. And one philosophy says, you know, government can seed opportunities that then grow and create, real opportunities and pathways for people. And another side wants to be more austere and have smaller government. But with where the university is concerned, where I see them really diverging off their ethical path, their moral path, is not really to have a conversation about, is this the best way to spend $1 billion building a new football entertainment complex that on the one hand, they would argue that it's going to create more taxable opportunities for the city of Evanston with these entertainment activities, but on the other hand, has a negative impact on the quality of life around that facility and for the homeowners that are going to be impacted by that development. But even on a deeper level, we have a lot of challenges in our city. We are north of Chicago, and we have many of the same violence challenges that the city of Chicago has. We have the housing challenges that the city of Chicago has. We have disenfranchised youth who are not developing appropriately. And the university could use those resources to create, like an upward bound program and workforce training and development programs and reading and literacy programs and other types of programs that impact health and wellness. There are just so many more things that relate to the educational mission that the university could be doing rather than pouring all of these dollars into an entertainment bucket.
Right.
And I feel like we're getting sucked into the expansion of the Big Ten Conference, which is now coast to coast. So we have teams on the East Coast, we have our teams in the Midwest, and they're adding USC and I believe UCLA. So we will be coast to coast, and there'll be tremendous television revenue contracts that come with that. And it seems like Northwestern is trying to take advantage of those opportunities.
Well, I would suspect that you're 100% right. And, on the one hand, though, playing devil's advocate, they're saying the Ryans are giving them half the money, like almost 500,000 or 500 million to do this, and that there's no cost to the residents. Although I personally would argue that significantly, because everyone within a mile, 2 miles will met Evanston are going to feel it every weekend. And so you pay with the quality of your life. You pay with your day-to-day enjoyment. And so it's not free. They may say it's free, but it's not free.
Well, there's no, there isn't a, when you say if there's an argument by people that there's no cost to the residents, it's simply not true. With the development of a new facility, there's going to have to be new infrastructure created that the city of Evanston and the taxpayers of Evanston are going to bear the burden of that cost. Not only if you talk about roads, if you talk about public safety infrastructure,
Right.
Those are just small things, but there are costs that occur even after the facility has been built, and the maintenance and the fact that you now have a new venue that's going to be, as they have said, it's going to be widely used and used often. All of that activity bears new costs, and so you can't escape that. And people should be honest about it and not try to sugarcoat that.
Right. Well, one thing that has been really challenging in this whole discussion does come into this play of how much, who's making how much. And so right now, like I bring up the fact that in 2018, Northwestern, and this was all legit, they have the zoning permission to do educational and cultural events there. They can do it every day of the week. But that's not being denied under the current zoning. But they made $93 million on streaming and NCAA, all their sports events, and the city got 1 million. So these flyers which say, and we're going to triple what we're getting, does that mean that they're going to triple too? Because no one is talking about like how much anybody's really making on this at what cost. So people think there's this great project coming that Evanston's going to get all this cash, but the jobs are one and done. Then they're gone. We're not, as to your point, we don't have that long-term 20-year training program that's actually going to get people from A to B. But and then on top of it, what about all the existing businesses in town? Because that have to pay property taxes, that have to pay all their costs and share, whereas Northwestern now gets to do everything as a nonprofit. So there's no property taxes, there's no other taxes that they can be hidden so far. They'll pay athletic tax, they'll pay, the wine and liquor tax, but they can also finagle and give away things to get donations. And we are not getting those numbers. And how would you recommend Northwestern? Do you have any thoughts about how?
I have quite a few. I have quite a few thoughts. I always come back to, having some honesty and integrity in these processes. Number one, the economic study that's being cited that talks about, tripling jobs and creating tax revenue. That's a study that is produced by Northwestern. And so I think we have to be honest about these issues. The City of Evanston should commission its own economic development study about the impacts of this tremendous new project so that we could compare apples to apples and not just receive a document from the university that they bought and paid for. So that's number one. Just be honest about it, and we have the resources ourselves to do our own study and impacts. And because of the magnitude of what is about to occur, it would be intelligent for our city council to direct the city manager to do that due diligence. Rather than stir everyone up and not really have accurate information about making these decisions. But then number two, the bigger issue is, as we said before, Northwestern is really, it has a lot of advantages being an educational institution in the fact that it's not paying local taxes, but yet it's operating like a corporation and creating a monopoly, particularly around the entertainment type business. And so there is a lack of competition because of these tremendous resources that are flowing into our community from the university. So, that goes back to the economic study that the city should do to really get a handle. If they're going to move forward with such a project, there ought to be some quid pro quo so that the community has an appropriate benefit if that were going to occur. I personally don't favor this project. I think that there are better ways to spend money when we have such entrenched problems in our community, particularly in housing, employment, education, and closing the education gap. Just so many other, homelessness, that's been a big issue downtown Evanston. There are so many more real world issues that we should be dealing with, and we're not dealing with it.
Okay, well, thank you. You know, I do want to point out that most of the people that seem to be opposing this project are not opposing a new stadium. And so I'd like to remind people who are listening that all the permit fees that they come in that are being put out there, that will come whether or not they get this, they break down zoning and get all this other cash to come into them on, not based on commercial. Because I think something we had talked about a couple months ago even was, what is a $15 billion? And this will be the last question because I know we're so over, but they have a $15 billion endowment. And I don't know if most people understand how that endowment works, because I understand it's separate from the sports. Supposedly the two can't mingle, but then every day, every month, there's so much money just in interest on it. What is that endowment for?
Well, the endowment at the university really funds the operation of the university. There are so many things that we could talk about around the endowment. The amount of money that endowment generates on a yearly basis helps to fund, operations, all of the budgets of the departments, the upkeep of the university, jobs at the university. And the reality is, when you have the kind of dollars that Northwestern has, you have to begin to ask questions. Why is tuition continuing to increase? The last I read, it was around $60,000 a year. There were about 70% of the students who were actually paying the full cost of that tuition. And there are a lot of issues around this project where they are saying that there's going to be a great benefit to the African-American community in Evanston. But the reality is there are tremendous racial issues at the university. Students have protested over the years. There have been some major upheaval just in terms of how Black students are treated at the university. And before COVID, there were some tremendous protests at the president's house that caught a lot of media attention. So the university doesn't really have its own house in order when it comes to Black students at the university. I can't speak for other groups, but I can't see this project being some panacea for the African-American community in Evanston when the other projects have never done that.
Right. That's a good point. Well, this is going to be going on very quickly. I heard that they are planning on submitting their proposal early February. So this will be, and then it'll go to land use, and then it'll be discussion. And as I said, there's a lot to be discussed because it appears from the media campaign that this is the best thing that's ever come to Evanston for everybody. And at the amount of money that they're making on a thing like this, I think that there needs to be some serious questions as do you blow up your zoning code so that a nonprofit corporation can make a lot more money? And what are we really making, like you said? What
is the real benefit for the community? As I said before, our community is very active. We care about people. We love people. We want people to be successful. We want people to prosper. And this project, it not only does it go against the values of the university, but I think it violates the community values as well. I just can't get beyond the fact that with all of the other priorities that we have in our society and in our local community, that we think that $1 billion spent on a football field is the thing that we should do. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Well, we'll be looking forward to more discussions with you, Kevin, along other lines too, I'm sure. Thank you so much for your time. And
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you can always pay attention, go to the CABG website, it's CABG.org, I believe, Community Alliance for a Better Government. And we will continue on and we look forward to always hearing your voice.
Oh, thank you.
And so
Appreciate you. I appreciate you. Appreciate your support.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to know you. Okay, thanks, Kev.
All right.
Bye-bye. I'm gonna end